Welcome back to Love English. I'm Layla, and today I want to help you sound more polite in English. Now, we know that in English saying please and thank you is so important. You probably also know that as well as thank you, thanks, cheers, ta, more formally, I'm very grateful, I really appreciate that. All these expressions can express thanks. Now, the thing is, sometimes you can get it wrong. And using certain phrases and expressions that you think might be perfectly acceptable, and indeed are in many of your languages, can actually sound a little bit rude in English. So, I'm going to explain 8 of those expressions and the more polite alternative that you can use. I'm not going to focus on too much grammar, but instead I'm just going to give you some fixed expressions to make you sound more polite and to encourage good conversation in English. Now remember, we always say please and thank you in British English. Again, sometimes in other languages it's the intonation of your voice, the pitch and tone that can express politeness. In English, you really need both, as well as some of these expressions that I'm going to explain. Now, if you haven't already, make sure that you subscribe, click that little red button below, and if you are already a subscriber, have you signed up for notifications? That means that you will be one of the first to be notified when we, Sabra and I, upload brand new lessons, which also means we'll be responding to you guys first. We always respond to comments on our lessons, especially in the first few days. So click that little bell button, and when those 2 lines appear either side, you are signed up for notifications. Make sure that you are part of the Love English community to help you learn English and sound more polite. So I just want to say thank you to some of you guys in your language for taking the time to subscribe and watch this lesson. So, gracias, grazie, merci, arigato, danke, spasiba, efcharisto. Okay, I did my best with the pronunciation there. If I did get it wrong, try correcting me. Tell me in the comments box below. And of course, if I didn't say thank you in your language, then write it below. Tell me how to say it, and I will say thank you to you in the next lesson. I may even mention your name. So, let's get started. 8 expressions that you should never say to make you sound more polite and avoid being rude in British English. Okay, number 1, and I'll tell you a story to go with this. Number 1 is want. Do not say I want. Don't go to Starbucks or Costa and say, I want a coffee, I want a latte, I want a mocha. I want is far too direct and it really does sound rude. I was once with a student in Harrods and he was ordering, very sweetly, some chocolates for me. He said, I want that chocolate, I want that chocolate, I want that chocolate. I told him, no, don't say I want. Say, I'd like. I would like. Contract it. I'd like. I'd like to buy. I'd like to have. I'd like that chocolate. I'd like to help you. Whatever it might be, say I'd like. I would like. There we go. Put the noun or the verb on the end. With preposition to and the infinitive verb, I'd like to eat some chocolate. I'd like to buy a coffee. I'd like a mocha chocolate latte. Starbucks have so many crazy coffees. I always joke with my students about the names. Or you can say, I'll have. Use will here for spontaneous decisions. I'll have a coffee, please. I'll have sugar and no milk, thank you. Even with these expressions, you still need to keep using please and thank you. We are so polite in the UK and America, of course. So make sure as well as using these expressions, you keep using please and thank you. Okay, now if you are working with some English people, if you are a manager in an international company and you need to give some orders, which you might very well do, try not to use imperatives. Send me the report by tomorrow. Do your homework. Call your mother. Whatever it might be, these imperatives sound far too direct and therefore a little bit rude. Try instead using an indirect question. Could you do your homework? Could you send me the report by tomorrow? Could you help me? Could you plus the infinitive verb here sounds much more polite. Of course, you can use can. Can you do your homework? Can you send me the report? This really expresses a little bit more ability and is a little less formal. It's perfectly polite, so you can also use it. Could you send me? Could you help me? Could you do? And can you? That's not too difficult. Now, if you are a little bit busy and someone's trying to get your attention, your help, then don't say, leave me alone, go away. Doesn't sound good. Ask them, could you give me a minute, please? Could you give me 5 minutes and I'll be right with you? Or, I'm sorry, I'm a little busy at the moment. I can't help you. I'm sorry, I'm a little busy at the moment. Whatever it might be, don't say go away or leave me alone. It's really too rude. Okay, if you're organising to meet up with someone, if you're trying to arrange a meeting and you want to know when somebody is available, again, don't say tell me when you're free, tell me when you're available. Use instead let me know. Let me know when you're available. Let me know what time suits you best. This sounds much more polite, and again, in more formal business situations, perfect. Let me know when you're free. Now, in any language, you are going to disagree with people. Sabra and I often disagree on things, and we know how to create a conversation, an environment where we can talk to each other and discuss our disagreements most of the time. So instead of saying you're wrong or I don't agree, try saying I think you might be mistaken. I think you might be mistaken. I think you might be mistaken. The film is at 10 o'clock, not 9 o'clock. I think you might be mistaken. The report needs to be submitted by 2 p.m. Sounds much better. I think you might be mistaken. Not too sure of yourself, not too forceful and direct, but it gives somebody an opportunity to just think, oh, yes, maybe I was wrong. You could also use a very popular phrase in English, which is I'm afraid. Now, in this case, I'm not scared, but I'm sorry. I'm afraid you've made an error. I'm afraid I disagree. I'm afraid. If you say I'm sorry, but you're kind of maybe apologizing, but you're not really. It's just a softer way to disagree with someone. You could even say I'm afraid I disagree. I'm sorry, but I disagree. It sounds much more gentle, much more polite. And again, you're going to encourage someone to talk back and to discuss this with you. What you don't want is to say you're wrong and somebody becomes very defensive. Now, similarly, you might also find that you don't like somebody's idea. If you're working in a group like many of our university students need to, or in a company, then there's going to be people whose ideas you really don't like. And again, saying that's a bad idea is a bad idea. So rather than saying that's a bad idea, or indeed using the word bad at all, it is better to say I'm not sure that's a good idea. Again, don't be too certain. I'm not sure shows that you're not completely against what they're saying. So there's room for compromise. And using a positive adjective is much better than using a negative one. It just sounds a lot more gentle and a lot more polite. So negative statement with a positive adjective. You could also say in a business situation, I have a few concerns. What about? Try and make suggestions to get somebody to think about other possible ideas. So, never use that's a bad idea. Now, as a teacher, I would never tell somebody that their work is bad or that their work isn't good. I would always try and start with the positive and then suggest ways to improve other aspects. One, you don't want to ruin somebody's confidence, and someone may have put in a lot of effort. So being polite and being gentle in this situation is a really good idea. You could try saying, I'm not quite satisfied with this. I'm not quite satisfied with this. Make suggestions. How about? Why don't we? What about? Remember, using negative language is not a good idea, and making sure that if you aren't happy with something, you make some suggestions. If you are going to be critical, make it constructive criticism. So suggestions to improve something is much better than just saying your work is bad. You could also say, I think this needs some improvement. I think this could do with some improvement. I think this needs some improvement. Not just that it's bad. Now, sometimes there's going to be things that you do not like. And saying, I don't like this, is really quite rude, especially if you say, I hate. Don't say that. If you say, I don't like, it really is negative. It's much better to say what you actually do like. So instead of saying, I don't like this soup, you could say, I'd prefer mushroom soup, or I'd prefer a hamburger. It shows actually what you do like rather than just expressing what you don't like. So don't be too rude. You could also use phrases like, I'd prefer, I'd rather. So I don't like going to the cinema. I'd rather go shopping. Right, a more advanced expression is I'm fond of. I'm fond of. Fond simply means I like very much. It's a much more formal, polite way of expressing your satisfaction, your liking of something. So, to say I'm not fond of, I'm not fond of, again, there's that negative structure with a positive adjective, which sounds much better. So, I'm not fond of football. I'd rather watch tennis. Much better than saying I don't like. Okay guys, I hope that lesson is going to help you sound a little bit more polite in English. Remember, number one rule is to avoid saying want. I want. I'd like, I'll have. Make sure that you try that next time you're ordering a coffee. Or indeed, comment in the box below, and why not request some lessons? Maybe you didn't like this lesson. Tell me if you didn't, but make sure that you do it in a polite way. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure that you subscribe, and don't forget to find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can find the links below in the description.